I ended up doing one of the hottest girls ever in an igloo. If you guys don't subscribe right now, you guys will never get your dream girl. But today's story does get insane, so like and subscribe. Other than that, let's jump into today's crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a really embarrassing story. So today's story all takes place back in high school. This was my grade 9 year, and I remember grade 9, this was around December. Now, December is usually the time when snow decides to come to Canada. If you guys don't know, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and well, let's just say snow comes around here a decent amount. And I remember one time when I went to school in grade 9 during December, I remember when I woke up for that day, it was the most snowiest day ever. I am not joking. It was so bad, the snow and how much it was surrounding everywhere, that it got to the point where people couldn't drive on the road. And the fact that I still had to go to school and they didn't call it a pro D day shocked everyone I knew. I remember my mom even came up to me and said, "Is it not a snow day?" "No, mom, it's not." "Oh my goodness. Well, good luck at school." Like, even if your own parent can't believe it wasn't a snow day, that's when you know the snow was bad. But I remember I ended up basically going to school that day. I got as many warm clothes as I possibly could, and I ended up going to school and I ended up meeting up with all my friends. All my friends were really angry and pissed off that, you know, it was not a snow day, and so was I. But little did I know this snow day was gonna end up becoming a miracle. Because I remember as we were in the middle of the class, it was the second block, and basically out of nowhere, we ended up hearing on the announcement something insane, where I remember the principal ended up saying,
"Ladies and gentlemen, after seeing the weather outside, after class today, you guys are free to go home."
At that moment, everyone in my class was cheering. Almost the whole school was cheering. You could hear it from the hallway. Like, everyone was so excited to basically not be in school anymore, which, to be fair, it was December. It was almost winter break. Like, just let us go, bro. So I remember from there, me and my friends, since we got off school early after lunch, we all ended up basically heading over to the football field to just hang out and just chill. I remember all my friends were saying how there was so much snow and we should do something while waiting for our parents to come pick us up from an early snow day. So I remember what me and all my friends decided to do was start building an igloo. If you guys don't know what an igloo is, basically it's like a snow cave where it's just a bunch of snow built into walls and kind of like becomes like a big hemisphere. Is it a hemisphere? I don't really know shapes, but it was a really cool thing. And I remember we ended up building an igloo all together, and it was super fun. And I remember me and my friends had a really good time with it. And since there was like 5 of us building it, I remember this igloo was actually pretty big. Like, you could fit more than 3 people in there easily. So knowing this, me and my friends were so proud of the igloo. And I remember once a couple of girls in my school ended up seeing that we built an igloo, they all started to join in and help us build the inside of it. It was actually kind of funny because we actually like sculpted somewhat of a bed, and you know, we started sculpting like a little TV. Obviously it wasn't an actual TV, but we actually had really a lot of fun with it. I gotta say, even though we were in high school, we had a really good time building this igloo. But little did I know this igloo was going to change my life, because what ends up happening next, I gotta say, was actually pretty naughty. Because I remember as parents started picking up more and more people, I remember it ended up being just me and a girl left. And I remember she was a really attractive girl in my school, and her parents both worked really hard jobs, so they couldn't pick her up till later. And I remember I walked up to her and said, "Oh man, this igloo is so cool. It sucks that we have to leave it." "I mean, we don't have to leave it." "What do you mean? What?" "I mean, we do. We have to go home." "I mean, we can like check in on this later tonight. You don't live far, don't you?" "No, I don't live that far, but I mean, do you want to come back to it and check on it? Is that what you're saying?" "Yeah, we just come back and check on it and make sure everything's still good." I mean, sure. When do you want to come check on it?" "Here, add my Snap. I'll message you when." I remember I ended up adding this girl on Snapchat, and I remember me and her, we ended up messaging all throughout the whole day, basically excited to go check on the igloo together. And I remember as I was on Xbox playing Call of Duty with the boys, I ended up telling them how I was going to go check on the igloo, and all of them wanted to come, but I ended up saying nah, because I already said that, like, you know, it was just going to be quick. It wasn't going to be anything insane. Basically downplaying it so I could have some alone time with this girl. And alone time did I have, because what ended up happening next, I got to say, blew my mind. Because I remember me and her, we ended up basically meeting up at the school. And I remember when I got there, I messaged her right away to, like, you know, come to the igloo. And then out of nowhere, right as I messaged her, she ended up actually coming outside of the igloo when I was standing outside of it. She came out and she said, "Bubba, there's so much room in here. Come inside. It's getting cold out." I remember me and her, we ended up actually going in there. And funny enough, it was actually somewhat colder in the igloo than warm. You know, I didn't really care because me and her, we basically cuddled in there and actually started making out. We started making out, and knowing that the igloo was still there and we had a makeshift bed that we made of snow, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is the part of the story where I say we did the devil's tango. We ended up doing it inside an igloo, and I'm not joking when I say this. My eggplant was purple. Like, it was freezing, and I don't even know how I made it work, but honestly, my eggplant is a trooper. And we ended up doing the devil's tango to this woman. And I remember as we were doing it, out of nowhere, we ended up hearing some massive machinery come out of nowhere. Me and her, we ended up looking at each other thinking, oh, it's probably just like cars passing by and stuff. But then we ended up hearing this crazy noise where it sounded like they were plowing through snow. Now, we thought they were just plowing like the parking lot of the school. They weren't plowing the parking parking lot of the school. They were plowing the football field where we built our igloo. So me and her, as we heard it coming closer and closer, we ended up trying to put our clothes on as fast as we could, but obviously we couldn't keep up. So I remember I ended up standing up freaking out, and I ended up actually getting out of the igloo with her, and she still didn't have anything on her top. So she's just running with her cherries out, and I'm running with almost my eggplant hanging out, and we're sprinting out of the field as these plow drivers are just looking at us as if we're two insane kids that were like freaks. And I will say this, honestly, it was the most embarrassing thing ever, seeing those plow drivers basically see me and this girl come out of that igloo with nothing on. I remember the next day, me and this girl, we ended up basically like agreeing the next day at school to not ever, and I mean ever, do that again. And I remember when we went home that day, basically me and her, we ended up messaging each other saying how we should never do that again. That was a terrible idea. But at the same time, it was super hot. But you know, me and her agreed that doing that was probably not the best idea. And I remember the next day when I woke up and I expected another snow day, out of nowhere, I remember I ended up seeing my mom come downstairs and say, "Bubba, you have to go to school. School's back on." Are you kidding me? It was just a snow day. Oh, they plowed the fields and stuff. You're good to go to school now. So I remember me being super upset. I ended up going to school. When I went to school, me and all the guys were really upset about what happened to the igloo and stuff. And obviously I ended up pretending I didn't know that, you know, it happened, even though I told them I was checking on it. I think the weirdest part especially was since we got caught that night, me and this girl, I remember this girl that ended up doing the devil's tango in the igloo with ended up walking up to me. She walked up to me and said, did you tell anyone what happened? No, why would I? It was embarrassing. Yeah, okay. I don't know if we're gonna get in trouble today though. So if anything happens, just say we did not know what we were doing. Okay. I remember me and her, we ended up going to class, and I remember our first class right away, right as the bell rang for school to start, we ended up hearing on the announcement something insane. Now everyone was expecting another snow day, but what this principal said over the speaker throughout the whole school was mind-blowing, because he said,
"Attention students, no snow igloos or fortresses can be made. Yesterday we encountered 2 homeless people performing coitus in the school field, so please, no forts and no types of igloos. Thank you."
Honestly, the fact that he said 2 homeless people made me know we were in the clear. And knowing this, honestly, I gotta say, was the most amazing save I think I've ever gone through. But this just goes to show that doing it in igloos is honestly crazy. So follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. I remember me and this girl end up going inside the U-Haul, and out of nowhere, she looks at me and says, "You know, I've never done it back here. This might be a new spot we could try." And at that moment, I remember she started taking off her clothes, and we did it in the back of a U-Haul. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a super crazy, but I gotta say, embarrassing story. Now, today's story all takes place back when I was in grade 10, and honestly, my grade 10 year, I was a major player. Like, don't get me wrong, on the channel, I always talk about me doing the devil's tango. But no joke, I think I've done it so many times to a point where I'm shocked my eggplant still works. But going on with the story, I remember there was one specific time back in my grade 10 year where I had a lot of sneaky links. Except there was one girl that was my sneaky link that I always enjoyed hanging out with. I don't know what it is about her, but like, she was always super nice to me, and she would always talk to me about like personal stuff. And not only that, but also doing the devil's tango with her was great. And over time, from me getting to know her, no joke, like, I gotta say, I think I might have like developed feelings. Obviously, I didn't say that to her whatsoever, because me back in high school, I wasn't really looking for a relationship. I just wanted to enjoy my high school years as much as possible and basically just have fun. But I remember me and her, we would always like plan to meet up at like random points of the day. Like, for example, there was one time at lunch where we ended up going to the fire escape, and we ended up closing the door and just doing the devil's tango. And sometimes we would do it in the back of my car, we would do it in a porta potty, we would do it in so many different places. And she was always down to do it because like she had as much energy as I had when it came to doing the devil's tango. In a way, I guess she was like the perfect person for me, at least so I thought. But I remember one time when I was sitting at home playing video games, I ended up getting a text message on my phone. It was her texting me saying, "Hey Bubba, what are you doing right now?" Nothing, I'm just at home playing video games. Why, what's up? "Oh, like, want me to like come over in like a bit?" Yeah, sure, you can come over, I don't mind. So I remember like 20 minutes went by, and she ended up coming over to my place. I ended up letting her in, we went upstairs to my room, and we started just kind of sitting down, hanging out, just talking about school and stuff. And I remember midway through our conversation, she says, "Honestly, like, yeah, I don't know how I would see myself going anywhere else but to the school we go to be honest." Well, good thing you don't have to think about it. "Yeah, I guess not." I remember when she said, "I guess not," I got confused because it seemed like she was hiding something, and she started to look a little bit off. So that's when I mentioned, "Is everything okay? Like, is something going on?" "No, nothing's going on. Don't worry about it. Here, let's just do it." At that moment, me and her, we did the devil's tango, and things were fantastic. But after we finished, I remember she got up and she had to go home because apparently her dad called her to do some work that she needed to do, which has never happened, by the way. She never got asked to do anything by her parents, so I'm surprised this was like one of the first times I've seen this happen. But then she ended up leaving my place and went home. I remember the next day at school, when I saw her in the hallway, I decided to walk up to her and say hi. I went, I said hello to her, and she started to look at me very awkwardly. And once again, I ended up asking her, hey, like, is everything all right? She ended up just giving me a massive hug and squeezing me as if she was going to leave. I remember I really didn't understand what was going on, and I was super confused. But I remember down the hallway, one of my friends that was like part of the boys back when I was in high school that I would always hang out with saw this happen, and after she hugged me, he ended up walking up to me. He walked up to me and said, yo, Bubba, is everything good, bro? Like, that was kind of weird. I've never seen you hug her like that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with her, to be honest with you. Bro, from the looks of it, I'm not gonna lie, it seems like she's developed feelings for you. At that moment in my head, I started to think, wait, is this really true? Does she really have feelings for me? I started to do the math on it and really thought, okay, if she's acting awkward around me and also hugging me very tightly, maybe she does have feelings for me. So that's when I decided to develop a plan to basically just ask her out. Because like I said earlier, she was almost like the perfect person for me. She always matched my energy. She always was, you know, awesome to hang out with. Like, there was no really losing with this girl. So I remember later on that school day, I ended up shooting her a text message saying, hey, like, do you want me to come over today? We can kind of like hang out. Actually, I'm kind of busy today. There's something I have to tell you. Do you want to like talk about it at your place? Yeah, sure. I don't mind whatsoever. We can go to my place. And when she told me that, I thought in my mind that, you know, maybe she was gonna tell me that she liked me and that we could start dating. So I remember that entire day, I was just super excited. I was super excited to see her. I was excited for her to come over. Like, you guys have no idea. This was the most exciting time for me. But then obviously all good things must come to an end, because I remember after school came around and I headed back home, started to play video games, waiting for her to come over. And when she finally came over, that's when things went south. Because I remember she came over and she didn't really want to speak. She just ended up like, you know, hugging me really tightly. And then we went straight to my room and we did the Devil's Tango. And like, we went straight to it. Like, we didn't have any conversation, nothing. But then that's when this girl ended up laying beside me and hugged me once more as we were finished. And she says to me, honestly, Bubba, I'm really gonna miss us. Miss us? Wait, what do you mean? And then that's when she sat up on my bed and said, yeah, I didn't know how to tell you, but I'm moving. You're moving? Wait, what? At that moment, I started to freak out. I was really annoyed. I was really upset, and I didn't know what to think. Like, this whole time, I thought she developed feelings for me, but no, it ends up being that she's leaving me and I'm never gonna be able to see her again. I remember I looked over at her and I told her, wait, so is this the last time I'm gonna see you? Oh, I mean, technically, like, to do it, yeah, but I mean, you can come over if you want and like help me pack if that helps. And that's when I agreed to help her basically pack and get things into the moving truck so I could see her one last time. Even though we weren't gonna do the Devil's Tango, I still wanted to see her. So I remember I ended up basically the next day, went to her place after school, and me and her started moving her boxes all into this giant U-Haul that her father rented. I started moving things in and helping her out, and as we were putting things in and moving things out of her place, we just kept talking about all the crazy places we've done it in and all the crazy memories from back in high school and even how we first met. Obviously, she started tearing up a bit here and there, and then that's when she said, honestly, like, this can't be the last time. I'm sure there's somewhere we could do it. I don't really know. Like, you don't have a bed anymore, and like, your father's home, so like, there's really no place we could do it. Honestly, we'll think of something, is what she told me. And we ended up picking up the final boxes of her bedroom and putting it in the U-Haul. At that moment, when we were putting the boxes away, I remember her dad ended up coming to the back of the U-Haul as we were putting stuff in there, and he said to us, oh honey, I'm gonna quickly be going to the store real quick to pick up some food. Are you hungry by any chance? No dad, I'm okay. Bubba, do you want anything? I'm good, thanks, to be honest. Okay, well, you kids have fun. I'll be back in like half an hour. He ended up getting in his truck and leaving, and the U-Haul was still left there in front of the house. And that's when this girl ends up looking around the U-Haul, and she says to me, Bubba, have you ever done it in a U-Haul? No, this would be a first if anything, is what I told her. And that's when she ended up taking off all her clothing, and we ended up doing the Devil's Tango in the back of a U-Haul. I remember we were shaking that truck like nonstop, and like, it was so awkward doing it in the U-Haul, but hey, I mean, it was only the Devil's Tango. How hard was it really? And I remember after like 20 minutes, we ended up hearing a truck pull up, and we recognized that it was her father's truck. So we started to put our clothes on as fast as we could. But right before I could pull up my pants, her father ends up opening the truck confused on why it was closed. And he saw me pulling up my pants and saying, oh, so that's why you hang out with my daughter so much, huh? Isn't it, Bubba? Sorry, sir, is what I said to him. And he's like, okay, son, just pull up your pants. And don't worry, this will be the last time probably you see her anyway. And he closed the U-Haul once again. At that moment, me and this girl just started laughing and laughing over and over. And we realized that, you know what? Maybe doing it in the back of a U-Haul was the best way to end off our relationship. I don't know. it's kind of crazy, and if you guys have never done it in the back of a U-Haul, then fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys. And I remember as I was hiding in my crush's closet, out of nowhere, I ended up seeing her walk into her room, and I was freaking out. Sitting there in the closet, trying not to make a single sound. And at that moment, I realized I was trapped in my own crush's closet. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but embarrassing story. So this story all takes place back when I was in middle school, and I was in grade 7. Now, grade 7 for me was actually pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie, like, I was a really basic kid, and honestly, I was a helpless romantic. I remember all throughout my middle school years, actually, funny enough, I only had one girl that I had a major crush on, and it was pretty well known throughout the guys in my school that I had a crush on this girl, but for her, I guess she was pretty oblivious. But I remember one day when I entered inside my school, I was sitting down writing in my journal as I was heading to class. If you guys don't know, back when I was in middle school, I had a journal that I basically wrote everything in. And yes, it was a journal, not a diary. I know how many people can get that confused, so trust me on this, it was just a journal. And basically with this journal, I remember as I was writing down in it, my buddy ends up walking up to me saying, "Yo, Bubba, what are you writing?" "Oh, nothing, don't worry about it." When in reality, I was actually writing about my crush. And I remember this wasn't the first time I wrote about my crush in my journal, and my buddy actually knows that I had a journal, and he always would make fun of me about writing in it, because let's be real here, he would always call it a diary. Anyways, I remember as he was asking me questions about the journal, he ended up grabbing it out of my hand, and he ended up saying, "Bubba, what? Are you writing about your crush again?" "Dude, give it back," is what I told him, and he ended up giving it back to me. I remember he kept telling me how I should just tell her the truth and just tell her that I like this girl, but honestly, I had no confidence whatsoever back when I was in grade 7 to actually go do that. And when we entered inside the classroom, we ended up all sitting down, and that's when class started. I remember even seeing my crush walk into the classroom when class started, and honestly, I couldn't get my eyes off her. If anything, like I said earlier, I was a helpless romantic, so every time I saw her, it was the only thing I could think about. That probably makes sense why my grades weren't so good, but it is what it is. Anyways, when class was about to end, I remember I quickly had to go to the bathroom, so I got up and left, and as I left, I remember when I got back from going to the bathroom, I ended up just packing my things and going home. And when I got home, I noticed the one thing that wasn't in my bag, and this thing was the most important thing in my life at the time, and that was my journal. For some reason, it wasn't there, and the last place I remember putting it was in my desk at school. So in my mind, I thought, okay, you know, it probably is at school. I can just go tomorrow, pick it up, and act like nothing happened. And I remember part of me, for some reason, just had a bad gut feeling. Like, you know that feeling when you get butterflies in your stomach that something bad's about to happen? Well, I had that feeling, but I tried my best to ignore it. And the next day, when I went to school early to go to my desk, I realized that my journal wasn't there. I was super confused on why, and I remember looking all over my desk and even taking everything out of my desk to see if I could find it, but it wasn't there. At that moment, I started to panic because I started thinking about if someone took my journal and they have access to all my crazy thoughts and all my secrets in life almost. So as I was panicking inside the classroom, class ended up starting and the bell rang, and everyone started to come into the classroom, seeing me totally empty out my desk and making a giant mess. It got to the point where my friend that, I hung out with yesterday, the day before, he ended up walking up to me saying, "Bubba, why are you making a mess, bro? What happened?" "Dude, I can't find it." "Find what?" "My journal, bro. Like, I can't find it anywhere." "Wait, what? You didn't get it back?" "What do you mean get it back?" And that's when I realized my friend ended up telling me that he put my journal inside my crush's backpack, so it would be like a way for me to confess my feelings to her. I remember at that moment, I started to panic. I started to freak out, and I even almost ended up yelling at him. But obviously, before I did that, though, my crush ended up walking in, and I knew I had to figure out where my crush put my journal. I ended up asking my friend as well where he put my journal, and he said he put it in her backpack, so I didn't think too much of it. And that whole day, I remember I was so nervous and freaking out inside about my journal being with my crush that I had no confidence whatsoever to go up to my crush and even ask her about it. For some reason, ever since I was a kid, and even now, I always had like a nervousness of like walking up to people and asking them for things. So I remember I always like kind of like held back, and even at lunchtime when I was about to walk up to her, I got super nervous because, well, she was my crush and I had no way to walk up to her. Anyways, one thing led to another, and the school day finally ended. And me, I just knew inside that I was worried because, well, since I didn't walk up to her, she was gonna go home and I wasn't gonna have my journal. So I remember I made up a plan to basically follow my crush after school and follow her home, which sounds really creepy, but to be honest, I was a kid back then, so I didn't really have that mindset, I guess, that it would be weird to do that. But I remember I ended up following her home, and when I saw and figured out where she lived, I ended up hiding and waiting until she got inside. And at that moment, I knew that I had to break into my crush's house and basically grab my journal. journal. If you guys are wondering why I just didn't wait the next day at school, well, it was a Friday. So there was no possible way that school was going to be on the weekend, and there was no possible way for me to actually talk to her since I was so nervous. So I remember as time ended up going by, I waited like extra 20 minutes outside her place, and that's when I decided to break into her house. If you guys are wondering how I broke in, well, I ended up looking around the house and ended up figuring out which one was her window, and I ended up opening her window. For some reason, the house back where she lived at was really easy to open the windows for, so I ended up opening the window and I snuck inside her bedroom. When I got inside, I was so scared. Like, you have no idea. It is not actually easy to break and enter into someone's place. And no, do not try it. This is a warning, okay? I was a dumb kid back then. Don't do what I do in these stories. But anyways, as I was in her room, I knew that I had to get my journal, so I ended up looking around. I started looking, you know, inside her cabinet to looking inside her closet. And when I opened her closet, I saw her backpack. And that's when I grabbed her backpack and opened it, and I finally found my journal. I guess my crush never opens her backpack because knowing that I was in there for almost 2 days is totally insane. But I ended up grabbing my journal, but right as I grab it out of her bag, I ended up hearing noises of someone entering her bedroom, and I thought it was my crush. So I ended up jumping inside my crush's closet, and I sat in there trying not to breathe. My crush ended up walking in and getting changed, and honestly, me sitting in her closet, I was totally terrified. And knowing that she was right in front of me really wasn't a good idea. Like, there was no way I was gonna just come out of her closet and see her inside her own place without her knowing that I was there in the first place. Like, I didn't want my crush to know I broke into her place, okay? Like, I really did not know what to do here. So me, as I was freaking out, panicking, sitting in her closet, I remember I sat and waited inside her closet until she would leave her bedroom so I can have the golden opportunity to leave her place. But for some reason, no matter what, my crush just would not leave her room. No joke, she went from sleeping on her bed to sitting on her desk doing homework and would just be on her laptop listening to music and watching One Direction videos. Yeah, I don't know. My crush did a lot of things that day that I never thought she would ever do. But honestly, as I was sitting in her closet, I'm not joking, I ended up getting really hungry and super tired, to the point where I was actually considering passing out in her closet and sleeping in there for the night. But luckily, I ended up hearing my crush's mom calling her name, and that was the one time she ended up leaving her room. And knowing that this was my only opportunity to leave her room, I ended up getting out of her closet, and I ended up opening the window as fast as I could and leaving. But right before I could close the window, as I was outside, my crush ended up walking into her room, and instead of closing it, I just sprinted away as fast as I could with my journal. I ended up running home, and I remember at the time when I got home, it was like, I want to say around 11:30 at night. And I remember when I got home, my mom ends up looking at me super upset saying, "Baba, where are you? Where'd you go?" Sorry, Mom. I was hanging out with friends." "What do you mean, Baba? You don't have friends." "Thanks, Mom. Thanks." And I remember I ended up just going downstairs and writing in my journal this exact crazy story that happened to me. Honestly, to this day, I'm still surprised that my crush never ended up finding my journal. And the next day afterwards, trust me, I ended up yelling at my friend for a good hour at lunchtime just because of his crazy idea for confessing my love to my crush that way. But honestly, what would you guys do in my situation? Would you guys break into your crush's house? Because if you guys would, then fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.